Fidel Castro was a great man. Fidel Castro accomplished a bunch of things. Fidel Castro, not only did he have a literacy program, but he had universal health care. He had universal education. It's set up in Cuba that if you want to continue your education, you want to continue to, learn a trade, learn this, learn that, you're allowed to do so. And that's why there's so many goddamn doctors in Cuba. There's so many doctors in Cuba. Doctors over here, doctors over there, doctors everywhere. They're a developing country, so they're up and coming, and sometimes they don't have all the medical supplies, but they are never without a doctor. At no point in time is any Cuban ever like, damn, I haven't seen a doctor in years. In America, that is typical. That is typical. If we do survive the coronavirus, it's not because we give a shit and we have a nice sort of authoritarian system to crack down on the damn thing. It'd be sheer blind luck. Sheer blind luck. So right now, Bernie Sanders, today is the day before. You got 365 delegates that are up in the air. You have Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, and Washington. Expect nothing from Mississippi because who the fuck would ever expect anything coming out of Mississippi? And Michigan, Idaho, Missouri. I'm not sure about Idaho. Michigan's going to be a hard-fought battle. That's going to be Michigan's the big prize because that's one of the three swing states of Donald Wright: Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, North Dakota. I have bad feelings about North Dakota. I got good feelings about Washington. Missouri, they got Ferguson, but then that kind of shows you, sometimes black folks get pissed off about something that it's not exactly that it was totally wrong. It's just that that's what set them off. And so having just nothing but a bunch of bullshit, shoveled their way, then they, hear about something and they took it the wrong way. Anyways, I'm not sure how Missouri will go. I think Missouri is kind of a swing state, whereas I feel like North Dakota, no. Mississippi, no. Michigan, maybe. Idaho, maybe. Washington, maybe. Maybe they'll go for Bernie Sanders. From NBC News, Joe Biden has 652 delegates to Bernie's 575, Liz 57, Mike 37, Pete 26, Amy 7, Tulsi 2. These are really bad numbers, so they're not really adding all the numbers that need to be added. And also, I guess you could just sort of assume that Amy, Pete, and Mike's votes will go to Joe. And so the way I've calculated, Bernie is down by 300 delegates. He's down by 300 delegates. He's got to win tomorrow, just a win, just a victory. There's, 6 states. He's got to win 3 or 4 of them, and then he has to win in the delegate count, however that shit shakes out. So he's got to win at least 3, 4, just to make sure that, he's won. He won tonight. He's got 4 of the 6 states. And then the next cluster, he needs to win by, 5% or a little bit more so we can get the momentum back. But, so right now Joe Biden has all eyes on Joe Biden. Joe Biden's got all the momentum. Now, this is about Castro because Bernie Sanders had said that they got, Larry David said, I'm going to say something controversial here. You know who was good at washing his hands? Joseph Stalin. So he said something about Castro, but Castro is fantastic. In fact, there's very few things. There's 2 things that I see that he's done. He's jailing dissidents, and perhaps he's executing some of his political opponents. Now, some people want to say he's a killer. Well, he fought in the revolution, the Cuban Revolutionary War. So I don't know anybody that's ever gone through a revolutionary war without, killing somebody. And murder is terrible, don't get me wrong. My point is that it's the revolution, and so you're fighting against a repressive regime. So you could say, all the soldiers, we support the troops. Well, they went out and killed people. So if you're going to sit there and just say, he's not a Hitler, he's not killing his own people, it's not a genocide, he's not invading other countries, killing, a certain group of people, he's not wiping anybody out like that. So, those are the 2 main criticisms, and those are bad criticisms. He is authoritarian, and you do need to, disavow those things. But compared to George Washington killed Americans who deserted. Compared to Woodrow Wilson, he threw Eugene Debs in jail just for making a speech against the war. So Woodrow Wilson's throwing political dissidents in jail. Woodrow Wilson's in World War I. You know, millions of people were killed. The Spanish flu killed another 50 million on top of everybody that died in World War I with, you know, the poison gas. So Woodrow Wilson, he killed people. Woodrow Wilson, he put political dissidents in jail just for making a speech. Woodrow Wilson was an authoritarian piece of shit. And so if Woodrow Wilson is an authoritarian piece of shit who murdered people, then how come people don't say in the same breath that, you know, Woodrow Wilson sucks? People say, well, why are you picking on Woodrow Wilson out of everybody? Why Woodrow Wilson? Well, the 1917 Espionage Act came from Woodrow Wilson's brain. And so now we're still fucking people over. We fucked Eugene Debs. We fucked Charles Schenck. We fucked over the Abrams, the Russians. We fucked over just so many people. Emma Goldman and Wild Bill Haywood. The Espionage Act just fucked so many people over. All my heroes were fucked and screwed over because of Woodrow Wilson in World War I. Then he targeted communists and socialists and anarchists, and then eventually until racists started, you know, getting their freedoms taken away, then the Supreme Court was like, okay, hold on, maybe we've taken this thing too far. I mean, sure, socialists and anarchists need to shut their mouth, but the white supremacists? No, no, no. And then they said Brandenburg v. Ohio, white supremacists could say a bunch of crazy shit, so therefore Black Panthers, socialists, communists, and anarchists could say a bunch of crazy shit too. So there's nothing that's actually above, you know, what... I should have actually waited to the end on talking about this. So, Castro is awesome. I'll just run through a couple things and then jump into Castro big time next time. But the doctors, they come up with the lung cancer vaccine, right? So for the last 9 years, they got a lung cancer vaccine. But Americans are like, nah, we would rather our children and cousins and grandparents die of lung cancer because we don't give a shit about anybody or anything. It's not like we allow evidence and logic to. So we, you know, they got the Sinovac free vaccine to the Cuban people, successful lung cancer vaccine. Cuba ended the mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis, and that's 2015. For the last 5 years, we've been able to stop the babies from getting syphilis and HIV. When it comes to the World Health Organization, they know that the Cuban doctors are top shelf, and they know that ending mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis is one of the greatest public health achievements possible ever. Just like a successful lung cancer vaccine. That's one of the greatest public health achievements possible. The Cuban physicians played a leading role in combating Ebola virus epidemic in West Africa. Cuban doctors were sent to help Africa with the Ebola outbreak. Trained hundreds of new doctors. Fidel's early life, son of a sugar farmer, was ostracized by wealthy Jesuit students. 1979, Cuba was elected to lead the non-aligned movement, offer a peaceful alternative to the belligerent East versus West Cold War. 1953, Fidel's put on trial. He says history will avenge him. And 69 of his fellow soldiers were hung. So if you want to say he's a killer, and the dissidents, I'm assuming, are against his revolution, or people that had, you know, challenged his revolution. So you didn't like Fidel Castro. You didn't want Fidel Castro to come on up. Well, how come from 1952 to 1958, Eisenhower was propping up Batista? Batista was an authoritarian dictator, thousands killed. So America wants to sit there and support these right-wing dictatorships and then act shocked, act just absolutely beside themselves when a socialist pops up out of these right-wing, you know, authoritarian dictatorships. When it came to Cuba, JFK had said that Cuba has to endure one of the worst economic colonization, exploitation, and humiliations in the world. 1952 is when Batista came to power in a coup d'etat. So Batista never had any legitimacy. He was never elected. The Cuban people never wanted him. But, you know, America did. America's giving him a bunch of money. America's allowing all those gangsters to take over Havana and the casinos and the brothels and, you know, just turning Cuba into basically one big plaything in the Caribbean. Fidel Castro made Cuba for Cubans. So when Fidel Castro took over Cuba, it was totally revolutionary. There's no doubting that it was revolutionary. And when it comes to warfare, only a revolutionary war should be fought Only a war that's going to change everything for the better should be fought. You're going to, have a war where it's going to change everything and it's not for the better? If you're not fighting in the name of revolution, what the fuck are you fighting for? Counter-revolution? Because neutrality is on the side of the oppressor. If you're not fighting in the name of revolution, you're counter-revolutionary. You're stopping people from progressing. So revolutionary warfare is the only kind of warfare. Woodrow Wilson didn't have revolutionary warfare. And, George Washington did. So if killing people is so bad, then that means George Washington and Woodrow Wilson should both be condemned equally. And Woodrow Wilson should be condemned more because he wasn't fighting a revolution. He was anti-revolutionary. He was stopping the revolutionary movements in America. So that way, no, I'm the king. No, I'm the president, and the war is good, and you better be patriotic. You couldn't even utter a criticism of the war. So there's a shit ton of things I want to talk about, Castro. I'm going to come back. There's Africa, Nelson Mandela. He was a comrade of Nelson Mandela's. Cuba belongs to the Cubans now, forever and ever. Fidel's an important monarch in Cuba. Cuba and Africa, just so many things. Mozambique, Namibia, Zaire, Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea-Bissau, Angola. The Angola campaign was tremendous. Because of Cuba, Angola is an independent nation today. Because of Cuba, Algeria is an independent nation today. They also went and fought the Somalians, I think, in defense of Ethiopia and Eritrea. Zanzibar, Western Sahara, Congo, the Portuguese colonies, Guinea-Bissau and Mozambique, Yemen, Egypt, Bolivia, these, South America, but these are all countries that Cuba, a tiny third world country, intervened to help them out as if they're a superpower. So when it comes to the, definitely Angola, biggest accomplishments would be Angola and Algeria. And also, I think Ethiopia, too. But they're all over the place. They're everywhere. So Cuba, saved Angola. Cuba saved Algeria. And then the embargo. So not only does Fidel Castro have to establish a socialist republic, on his own accord, just with the natural elements against him, but he's got to fight an imperialist guerrilla that's on his back. 900 times the CIA had tried to assassinate Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro would only sleep in the same spot for 2 days in a row. So, what the fuck? He can't get no good sleep. He's paranoid. Is it stupid that he's paranoid? It's not dumb. It totally makes sense. We tried to assassinate him 900 times, so how many times did Cuba try to assassinate our president? You think our president would have done a good job if they had to always look over their damn shoulder for 900 assassination attempts? 900, including an outright invasion of ex-Cuban exiles with the Bay of Pigs. So, yeah, George Washington killed deserters, and Fidel Castro killed deserters. Fidel didn't own slaves like George Washington did. And then right after the revolution, Castro's going to kill his enemies, imprisoning them. There's mass executions. But I don't hear too many of political dissidents in the last couple years, 10, 20, 30 years ago. I could be wrong about this, but I don't hear about them as much. And but again, even if you were to say, those are the two biggest criticisms. So even if you were to say, well, you killed people and you threw political dissidents, so did George Washington, so did Woodrow Wilson. How come you don't fucking say shit about that? How come you don't say shit about that? Throwing political opposition in jail, and that the whole thing that Donald wants to do, and then killing people? We're still in war. Obama killed people. George W. Bush killed people. Now Donald Trump's killing people, including an American girl in Yemen. Is it a big, shock? He also ordered a hit. He ordered a hit on a U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Yeah, take her out. Take her out. This is, so you're going to try to tell me that Castro, because he killed people in the Revolutionary War and he, jailed political dissidents, was against freedom, not a very good democracy. We don't have democracy here. People are going to jail here for, political prisoners. Under Woodrow Wilson, definitely. It was over and over again. Anyways, yeah, so there's a lot of great things about Castro. Let's see, can I mention one more thing? One more thing. Okay, last thing I'm going to mention is that democracy has taken root in Cuba. They do have elections. They have a brand new constitution, brand new president. Fidel Castro's been dead for 4 years. You're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, but, you know, apparently Fidel Castro, you're not supposed to ever speak good of that dead. In America, Whoopi Goldberg acts like you're standing on my shoulders. Whoopi Goldberg shits on progressives over and over again. Yeah, and we're supposed to kiss her fucking dumbass. Fuck her. I don't know. Does she know that Cuba's got a brand new constitution? Does she know that Britain doesn't even have a constitution at all? They don't have any guaranteed codified Bill of Rights. There's no Bill of Rights that they're guaranteed to have. They're not Americans. Britain don't even have a goddamn constitution. Their fucking election was what? 1% of the population came out to vote? What kind of election is this? Talk about, Jesus Christ, an unfair election. That's, you know, Saddam Hussein kind of election right there. So Cuba has a constitution. They have elections. And they have a literacy rate. They got universal health care, universal education. One last thing, this will be, I swear it's the last thing, Castro, when he wins the Cuban Revolution, he has a goodwill tour in America. He gives lots of interviews and talks to lots of different people. It's kind of crazy, to be honest with you. It's surreal, because when you think about who he is now, but in 1959, he just won the revolution. America didn't know who he was yet, and so he comes for a goodwill tour. But guess what? Dwight D. Eisenhower doesn't go meet him. He does meet with Nixon. And he goes to the Lincoln Memorial, and Fidel Castro lays a wreath at the Lincoln Memorial. Fidel Castro respects us. Fidel Castro likes, you know, what we've been doing and what we've been accomplishing. Socialism is the critique of capitalism and vice versa. So just like yin and yang, we need each other. We need balance. And, you know, where they might have been too socialist, we were too capitalist. And I'm not even for sure, like, we're capitalist because our rulers are capitalist. Talk to American people. They aren't, like, pressing, like, God, I just want to sell my wares. I just really want to sell my wares. I want to have a farmer's market and get into business. I just don't see, it's not like dog-eat-dog capitalist the way it's supposed to, the way you would think that it would. If we all were capitalist, that means we all got to get a job, we all got to find a business, we all got to figure out our little niche, and every one of us is, you know, trying to find our way that way. And so I just don't, in America, I was, from the teachers, from anybody, I just never heard anybody say, we're capitalists, okay, and that we're capitalists to our bones, and that's just what we do. We capitalize on shit, try to make money, exploit people, whatever it takes to make money. That's ultimately, I mean, that's, only when I mentioned socialism did I hear any type of criticisms or defense of capitalism, but until I mentioned socialism, it was almost like, well, we're just being people doing our people thing, you know. It doesn't matter if it's about the money. It doesn't matter if it's about this or that. So, yeah, Fidel Castro is a badass. Fidel Castro is a badass. Instead of taking on the criticisms of him, I'm just going to list all the great things about him in the next video. So, coming up, a whole bunch of shit that Fidel Castro. There's a reason Nelson Mandela likes Fidel Castro. There's a reason Nelson fucking Mandela. I mean, there's Gandhi, there's Martin Luther King, there's Nelson Mandela. These are like the only few Jesus Christ figures in our time. And Nelson Mandela believed in sabotage. So he was kind of like those, you know, bird sanctuary boys up in Oregon. But, yeah, sabotage. So he was going around blowing up factories and shit. But times are tough. Times are crazy back in South African times. And then he's put in jail for 30 years. America's going against Nelson Mandela, and Fidel Castro fought for him. I saw a video where Nelson Mandela is begging Fidel, come visit. When are you going to come visit? Come visit South Africa. We want you to come here. And Fidel said that he loves South Africa. He basically considers it's his homeland, and he wants to, you know, and then he's going to go there and give a speech. So, you know, Nelson Mandela begging Fidel Castro to come. If Fidel Castro is a friend of Nelson Mandela's, then Fidel Castro is a comrade of mine. Nelson Mandela, Jesus Christ. So Whoopi Goldberg wants to talk all this shit about Fidel Castro. What about Nelson Mandela? Yeah, you'll sit there and say all the great things, but what do you say about Palestine? Why don't you quit, you know, fucking around with Palestine? Why don't you... Okay. Coming back with some more. Castro is a great man. Peace.